Cross-contamination is a cause of foodborne illness. Foods can become contaminated by microorganisms, bacterial and viral, from many different sources during food storage, preparation, and service. Preventing cross-contamination is one step in the prevention of foodborne illness. Bacteria from one food can contaminate another food. This type of cross-contamination is especially dangerous if raw foods come into contact with cooked foods. People may also be a source of cross-contamination. For example, hands touching food after using the toilet without properly washing them. Contamination can also be passed from kitchen equipment and utensils to food. This type of contamination occurs because the equipment or utensils were not properly cleaned and sanitized between each use. What is wrong with this picture? Raw chicken and salad ingredients on the same cutting board. Raw chicken and salad ingredients being cut with the same knife. Raw chicken and salad ingredients being held by the same hands that will probably not be washed between tasks. Cross-contamination is dangerous because the harmful bacteria that have contaminated the food may also cause foodborne illness. The Centers for Disease Control report that each year 75 million people suffer from foodborne illness. Of these, 325,000 are hospitalized and 5,000 people die. So not only does foodborne illness carry with it uncomfortable symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, it may also cause death. Obviously, not everyone eating the same foods will suffer the same degree with foodborne illness. There are some groups that are more at risk for developing foodborne illness than others. They include the elderly, very young, individuals with compromised immune systems, and pregnant women. There are a number of bacteria, viruses, and parasites that cause foodborne illness. We're just going to review a couple of them as they relate to cross-contamination. Everyone has heard of E. coli. E. coli is found in the colon of animals, including humans. Fecal contamination of food with E. coli leads to foodborne illness. This is most often found associated with undercooked beef, particularly ground beef. We're now seeing more contamination of raw fruits and vegetables, unpasteurized milk and juices, and of course person-to-food contamination. Norovirus is obviously a virus and not a bacterium. In the past, there have been outbreaks of norovirus on cruise ships. In one of our neighborhoods, a country club's food service operation was closed down to the norovirus. The kitchen was not allowed to reopen until every inch was washed and sanitized. Again, the virus seemed to be transmitted by contaminated hands contacting ready-to-eat foods. Salmonella is usually associated with raw chicken and eggs. When I was a kid, eating raw cookie dough was a treat. Now it's discouraged unless using pasteurized eggs. Recently, there have been some salmonella outbreak in foods that are not typically associated with raw poultry or eggs, such as fresh fruits and vegetables. Yet another example of cross-contamination. Following simple rules will reduce the risk of cross-contamination. Always wash hands before handling food and when changing tasks. Gloves are to be used when handling ready-to-eat foods. Wash your hands before putting on gloves and taking them off. Wiping cloths are to be stored in sanitizing solutions. Raw foods, especially meats, must be kept separate from ready-to-eat foods. Food contact surfaces must be cleaned and sanitized before food is prepared on them. We have mentioned food contact surfaces. What are they? Well, obviously they're surfaces that come in contact with food. Some examples might be the robo-coup, prep table, knife blades, can openers, slicers, etc. Examples of non-food contact surfaces would be the floor, inside the oven, walls, and so forth. We've talked about cross-contamination, bacteria that may cause foodborne illness, and examples of unsafe food handling practices. To become an effective safe food handling operator, you must observe kitchen operations. The following tasks will guide you in what is important to look for when evaluating the success of your food service operation. Hand washing is so important. It's the number one way of preventing biological contamination. We want to make sure our staff is washing their hands before beginning food prep And after changing tasks, we want to make sure our staff is washing their hands in the dish room between handling dirty and clean dishes. When we're understaffed in the dish room, many will try to shortcut washing hands, but it's a priority. It must be done. Hand washing must occur after touching face, hair, nose upon entering the kitchen. Gloves often give staff a false sense of security. For example, a cook is panning or plating salad, stops to take a phone call, and returns to plating the salad without changing gloves. This is a cross-contamination issue. So gloves in essence really are to prevent bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. We must wash our hands before putting on our gloves and taking them off, and we must be changing gloves in between tasks. What's wrong with this picture? Again, we have a gal who's making sandwiches with no gloves. So she's touching all this ready-to-eat food with her bare hands. How are the staff cleaning, sanitizing food contact surfaces? Slicers can often harbor harmful bacteria. During a sanitation audit, I observed gooey food debris when unscrewing a part of the machine. I advised the staff to disassemble the slicer, clean, and sanitize it. They gave me that deer in the headlights stare and implied no one had ever showed them how to do that. So don't assume the staff knows how to do all the tasks in the kitchen. You might have to show them. Remember, food thermometers are food contact surfaces and should be washed and sanitized between uses. And then another thing to observe are raw meats stored on the lowest shelf on a drip pan to prevent cross-contamination. Wiping cloths are to be stored in the bucket, not on the counter, not in the sink, and so forth. There should also be an accompanying green bucket filled with soapy water to clean the food contact surface. What is the concentration for the sanitizing solution in the bucket? For chlorine, it's 50 to 100 parts per million. I've always heard 100 parts per million is recommended for sanitizing clean-in-place equipment and food contact surfaces. Quaternary ammonium, 200 parts per million. Always check the concentration of the sanitizing buckets throughout the day. Remember, too much sanitizer can be a hazard, and also during the day, the sanitizing solution may become diluted or dirty and must be changed. The following few slides provide a simple quiz to determine the effectiveness of this mini lesson on cross-contamination. What is cross-contamination? Transfer of hazardous material, transfer of harmful bacteria, transfer of heat, transfer of electricity. The answer is the transfer of harmful bacteria, and this is a lovely picture of E. coli. How can cross-contamination be prevented? Hand washing, keeping hot foods hot, washing the kitchen floor, brushing your teeth. Hand washing, hand washing, hand washing cannot be overemphasized as a means of preventing foodborne illness. Raw meats will be stored where in the refrigerator? On the middle shelf within easy reach, on the bottom shelf, the top shelf with the drip pan, next to the pasteurized eggs. Of course, the raw meats will be stored on the bottom shelf on a drip pan, and that way, if some drippings do happen to fall, it will fall on the floor of the refrigerator instead of the ready-to-eat foods. Which is an example of cross-contamination. Salad ingredients are prepped in a different area than the entree items. Washing hands after going to the bathroom. Adding leftover food to a fresh pan of food. Using clean gloves on clean hands to portion cookies. Well, adding old foods to fresh is a form of cross-contamination. We don't know what happened to that pan of rice. Was it on the steam table? Was it left on the counter? Where was it? And anything that is growing in that pan of rice is now contaminating the fresh pan of rice. What do you do when observing cross-contamination practices? Refuse to eat the food, call the health department, take corrective action in in-service staff, walk away. Successful food service operations are continuously monitoring staff, evaluating procedures, educating staff, and updating procedures. When you observe improper food handling practices, you must intervene. One question you must ask yourself, is the food safe to eat? And if the answer is no, throw it away. For example, if you observe a cook with a spoon tasting the salad, potato salad, adding a little more salt and stirring, and then using that same spoon to get another sample and taste that potato salad, well, that potato salad's now been contaminated and needs to be thrown away. Have the staff remake the food, train them in the correct method of food handling so as to prevent contamination and foodborne illness. This concludes Module 2 of the Safe Food Handling series. Visit rdoffice.net for more training videos and continuing education programs. I'm Linda Roberts.